Welcome to Power Up Your Practice, the go-to podcast for law firm owners and managing attorneys working on the business, not in it. I'm Ruby Powers, your guide into the heart of law practice management, bringing your insights from leading legal minds, trailblazing attorneys, and expert guests who provide practical perspectives on running your firm more effectively and efficiently. And before we dive in, I'm thrilled to announce that my latest book, Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with actionable advice for growing a successful law firm. Be sure to grab your copy today. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive tips and resources. And if you're enjoying this podcast, we love your reviews. They help us reach more attorneys like you who are striving to build the practice of their dreams. Prepare to open your mind, be inspired, and power up your practice to the next level. Welcome back, everyone. This is Power Up Your Practice. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, and we are going through the ever-evolving world of law practice management. I'm really excited to have my guest, Marc Whitehead, today. We met through Houston Bar Association law practice management section type of stuff many years ago. I believe it was many years ago. And he is the Marc Whitehead Associates attorneys at law firm, 75-person firm, and he's also an Atticus coach, and he also has the successful Barrister podcast and a newsletter. So welcome to the show, Marc.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, so I pass by your office every once in a while, and I remember looking at that building when I was trying to figure out which building to buy, but it looks nice, I just want to say.
Thank you. We worked hard on that. Through 2 hurricanes.
Oh, wow. Yes, for those listening, we're both in Houston, so I probably am only like maybe a mile or two away from you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how long have you had your firm and what practice area are you in?
Well, I'm sort of have a unique practice. We practice in the area of disability benefit law, which basically means that we represent clients who've been denied either government benefits by the Veterans Administration or the Social Security Administration, or otherwise we're suing insurance companies who've denied our clients disability insurance benefits. That is the primary focus of our practice. We have a few other little niches, but that's primarily it. And we've been in business this November will be 33 years. I know it's shocking that because I don't look more than 25, but yes, we've been in business for 33 years. Started out as a basic personal injury law firm. And then probably about halfway through it, we morphed into purely a disability benefit law firm because, quite frankly, I like the life better, higher quality of life.
So I don't really know a lot of firms that do the disability benefits. How have you leveraged technology to scale, and what are like some of the services that you provide, and how do you find your clients?
Yeah, so I guess the best way to describe what our client, I tell the story of Mike the mechanic, and this is a true story. His name was really Mike, client of mine. And he was back 30 years ago or so. He was in the Air Force. He was an aircraft maintenance specialist, and he was on the wing of a big old C-130, if you know what that looks like, on one of the Air Force bases in San Antonio. I can't remember which one. And he fell off and shattered his back. At that point, he's in his mid-20s. They patch him up. He gets an honorable discharge. He goes off to work as an aircraft mechanic for what was originally Continental Airlines, which then merged and became United Airlines. He's been doing that for 30 years. So now Mike's in his mid-50s and his back collapses on him. Okay. Well, Mike has 3 claims. He can claim for veterans disability benefits. In other words, he can request a disability rating through the VA based. He can connect his current disabling condition to his military service. He can claim for Social Security disability because he's paid Social Security taxes out of his check for some 30 odd years. And he can claim for, under his employee benefits plan with United Airlines, he can claim for disability benefits through their insurance company, which I believe at the time was Unum. It may have changed since then. So he can make all three of those claims at the same time. Statistically speaking, he's going to get denied on all three of those claims. That's where my firm comes in. We represent individuals such as Mike on these three basic different types of disability insurance claims. And we kind of came to each of those practice areas in a different sort of way. Way back in the day when I used to do a lot of PI work, I was approached by a gentleman who was a lawyer but had lost his law license because he had a drinking problem. And he would go around to all the PI lawyers and say, hey, send me your Social Security disability claims and I'll cut you in 50-50 on referral fee. Because you do not have to be a licensed attorney to represent somebody before the Social Security Administration, which is, a lot of people don't know that, but that is true. And so we did. And then one day he got his license back and he wanted to change the deal. He didn't want to do 50-50 anymore. And I'm like thinking, wait a minute, I can do these things. So I just started doing them. And I found out I liked it. You know, you would go into a hearing and you would win a case for, you know, some lady that's probably 50, 60 years old. And all of a sudden she's going to get a monthly check and you've got her on Medicare. So she now has medical options that she didn't have beforehand. She can now get her prescriptions. She's crying. She's giving you a hug. She's telling all your friends how great you are. And I'm like, this is actually a pretty cool existence. I really like that. So we got into that as sort of a supplemental practice area to the personal injury side that we were working. You know, and the more I did it, the more I realized I just like doing the disability side so much more than doing the personal injury side. On the personal injury side, I mean, I was always on call to go to trial. You know, I had 200 cases in active litigation at any one time, just a bunch of car wreck cases. You couldn't take a vacation. You were constantly strapped down by your trial calendar. You know, I tried so many jury cases and like, you know, I had moderate success, but I didn't have no big hits because most of it's just car wreck stuff. And I just realized that I could make a living on the disability side and I'd have a better life. I wouldn't be a slave to a trial calendar. I wouldn't be a slave to defense counsel pulling my chain or discovery and depositions and all of this stuff. And so I would say in the aughts, as I like to call them, about 05, 06, 07, somewhere in that neighborhood, I just started to transition. And about that same time in 2007, 2008, the Congress changed the law and allowed attorneys for the first time to charge veterans a contingency fee on veterans' disability cases. Up to that point, we were prohibited from doing that. And that opened up the veterans' disability market as a viable practice area. And it just was a complement to what we were doing. And then as we did that, what I realized that there was a lot of these disability insurance claims out there to get as well. Most of, you know, from our Social Security clients, and most of them are what we'd refer to as ERISA preempted, because they're under employee benefits plan. So most lawyers run when they hear the word ERISA. They don't want to deal with it. And I understand why. There's lots of traps and not a lot of upside to them. But I figured out how to do them because they kept coming into my office from my Social Security clients. So that's basically how we built the practice. And over the years, we just started phasing out the personal injury side because that is a dog-eat-dog business. I mean, you go down the highway, you see a million billboards for car wrecks. You know, turn on the TV, you see commercial after commercial. It just really, really, it's a tough business to be in. And I just decided I found a better way. So I moved we don't handle any single event personal injury anymore. No car wreck cases, nothing. We strictly stick with the disability side. And we just kept pushing it. You know, now we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3,000 open files that we work on the disability side. And I work less now than I ever have. I know, you know, it's amazing, but it was a better life. You know, and now I can spend time I have 4 daughters, spend time with my kids, spend time with my wife. You know, it suited my lifestyle better, but it took me half of the 33 years to start seeing the light. And it took me the second half of the 33 years to really build the practice up to where it is now.
So that's a really good success story for those who might start in one area of practice and then pivot at some point midway, but then also just constantly seeing opportunities and then, being brave enough to just leap for that and go in that direction. So yeah, I mean that's awesome.
Well, we definitely didn't take a leap. We definitely phased it in.
Phase it, so it's
Probably phased
gradual.
in
Yeah.
over about a decade.
Okay.
One of my favorite quotes is from Jim Collins. He says, "Fire rifle shots before you fire cannonballs." In other words,
Mhm.
take small
Yeah.
risks and move gingerly in that direction. And then once you figure out
Mhm.
you've got something, then fire your cannonball, then fire your big gun. So we did phase it in over about a 10-year period.
And
And if it didn't work, we could have backed out and gone the other way. So,
yeah. So that's awesome. Because I think sometimes people are getting burnt out with a certain practice area, or they see opportunity and they want to branch into another one. And just like it feels like a lot of work, but that's a good approach. Just like gradually experimenting, and it keeps being successful, and keep going in that direction. So where did the successful Barrister newsletter? Because I think you said
mhm.
as we're getting prepared that it's 10 years old. It's you've had it for 10 years or so. Where'd that come into picture?
Well, so we were basically brainstorming ideas about how to market to other attorneys, because I would say our biggest referral source are other attorneys. But how do you do that at scale? Um, so one of the things I'd always done a good job of from day one of my practice was collecting names and keeping a good,
Mm,
solid database of people. Obviously, my clients and so forth, we have a large database of them, but I also have a large database of attorneys. And these aren't lists that I bought or something. These are actually people that I have some connection with. So, I was president of Houston Trial Lawyers. I am still board of Texas Trial Lawyers. I'm on the board of AAJ, our national organization. I mean, I've been in HBA, so many things. Um, I've been Atticus, Pilma, all of the organizations that I'm a member of. If you try hard enough, you can get the list of names, and these are all people that you sort of know anyway. And then like my mother's an attorney. Everybody knows me as Brenda's boy. So she was president of the AWA, the Association of Women Attorneys. So she knew all the female attorneys in town. So I got her list. Literally a physical Rolodex. I had to physically back in the day. And by the time I added up all these names on my list, I had about 4,500 names of attorneys that I had some connection with somehow. And I like, how can I connect with these people? I have a newsletter that goes out, but it's basically targeted to my clients, and lawyers don't care anything about that. So we got the idea. Let's create a newsletter, an interesting newsletter directed specifically at lawyers. And let's not talk about disability law. Nobody cares about that. You don't want to hear this stuff. What do lawyers want to hear about? They want to hear about how to market. They want to hear how to manage their firm. They want to hear life skills, life hacks. So we basically came up with a successful Barrister newsletter. The byline is marketing management and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. And it's meant to be funny. It's meant to be snarky. It's everybody that writes an article in it, all my attorneys that each write one article. We all have our own caricatures. Everyone has a theme. It looks like a comic book. It's an 8-page glossy mailed thing. It's not an email thing. It's mailed. You got to have a physical address on you. And we just cover, all sorts of issues regarding marketing management, law practice. We very seldom talk about what we actually do unless it relates to something, regarding that topic. Because again, I don't want to bore my readers. And we do it 6 times a year. So it's a pretty significant endeavor to put together something that well thought out, that well put together. I have a marketing manager that she has a calendar for the whole year. Like we have the whole year planned out. We know pretty much the entire year what we're going to write about. We know what the themes are going to be. lot of snarky quotes, a lot of smart assness, quite frankly. I've had multiple people call me up pissed off about something I said and demand to be taken off the mailing list from time to time. And we said something. I don't know what we said. And I'm like, whatever. But it's become really popular. And it's in its 10th year now. And quite frankly, I didn't think that anybody would notice. We decided that it was so much work that we would cut down from 6 issues a year to 4 issues a year.
Uh-huh.
We did that about a couple of years ago. And when we did it, I had all these people calling and complaining, like, Mark, what happened? Did we fall off the mailing list? What happened? I was like, oh, crap. I didn't realize anybody would even notice. So we've gone back to 6 issues now, because people really do notice when they don't get it. So anyway, we're very proud of it. I think it's extremely well done. So we've now decided that we need to turn the Barrister, the newsletter, we need to turn it into a podcast. So we have now turned it into a podcast called the Successful Barrister Podcast, which you can find at any of your podcast, what do we call them? Outlets, podcast distributors, whatever the word that is.
Yeah. Wherever podcasts can be found.
Wherever podcasts can be found, we are there. And it's just myself and my COO, Diana Berry. And we basically find a topic and we just spend about 30, 40 minutes or so riffing on a topic. That's just our format. We don't do guests. Not that we wouldn't do in the future, but right now we just kind of keep it us. So we follow the EOS model, if you're familiar with that. I bet you.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I'm the visionary. She's the integrator in our firm in that EOS model. So we basically kind of come at all the topics from different points of view. I come at it from the gunslinger point of view, like, hey, let's take a shot, let's try this. And she comes at it from the very conservative, wait a minute, let's think about this. There's downsides. We don't want to get sued. So, that's sort of the format.
Yeah.
That we follow. And then we sprinkle in a lot of our Atticus coaching materials. I'm a member of Atticus. There's different companies out there called Atticus for different things. This is Atticus Lawyer Coaching. The website's atticusadvantage.com. But they're probably one of the oldest lawyer coaching groups out there. And I would say that they have helped me tremendously through the second half of my journey when I transitioned and really started scaling up the firm. And I've actually now become a coach with Atticus. So I coach other lawyers, basically using the Atticus curriculum, the Atticus techniques, and so forth. So we sprinkle in other words, we blatantly rip off a lot of the Atticus concepts for the podcast, of which they've trademarked everything, and they haven't complained yet. I think it's free advertising, but we blatantly rip them off left and right. In whatever we happen to be ripping at the moment. So.
Okay, where do we go from? So when let's go back to the law firm for a second. So you've 33 years, I think you said, 75 people. Like, what were some of those? I think before we started recording, you said something like there was the divide your career into like 2 sections, like the one
right.
before you knew what you were doing or something. I forgot what you said. But like, what were some of your aha moments in terms of like building up the infrastructure and the staff? Like lessons learned?
I would say that I've had several aha moments. I would say that one significant aha moment that I had was a friend of mine. You may know him, Jonathan Harris. He's a lawyer here in Houston. We were talking, and he had some disability insurance claims that he wanted to refer me, but they were out of state. They were in somewhere in the Midwest. And I go, and he has a big maritime practice, so he's used to flying to Scotland, to taking depositions and handling cases. Ships that blew up in the Middle East, just all over the world. And I pretty much had stuck to Harris County, Texas. And I said, I'm not licensed to practice in those states. He goes, dude, this is all federal law. You can do this in any state. And he really opened up my eyes, and I realized everything I do is federal. All your disability programs are federal. I'm not stuck to Harris County, Texas. I'm not stuck to Texas. I can actually practice anywhere in the country with these types of cases. We have a network of local counsel that we use to pro hac us if necessary, but a lot of federal districts we can direct file in and don't even need local counsel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went from a very local car wreck practice to a national disability practice based on that one conversation that I had with my friend Jonathan Harris. And we still joke about this. He goes, I want a referral fee. Like, no, you don't get any referral fees on this. So last time I counted, I have now litigated in 44 states plus Puerto Rico.
Wow.
So really opened up our market, which has allowed us to go from a few hundred cases to several thousand cases because we've opened up the market and the potential where we can go. Now, I'm not saying everybody can do that. I mean, if you have what I would call a state law practice, a basic PI or family or states, you're kind of going to be limited to the state you're licensed in. But we just happen to be in that unique practice area where everything we do is federal. Everything we do is, at least for the government, is based out of DC, and the rules are set up that lawyers can practice anywhere. And it never occurred to me until I happened to talk to a maritime lawyer, nothing that I do at all, but he goes, we do it. Why can't you do it? So that was an aha moment that really changed the trajectory of, how we practice and how we think.
Mm-hmm.
I would say another aha moment was the first time I ever heard anybody from Atticus speak. It was Mark Powers, who was one of the owners, and he was at a Texas bar conference back in the aughts. And I can't remember everything he said, but one key thing he said, he goes, when you go back to your office today, I want you to fire your worst employee, and I want you to fire your worst client.
Mm.
And I went back to the office and I did it. And it was like, wow, that was an epiphany. This guy's really smart. My life is so much better now that I've gotten rid of, it was sort of emblematic. I mean, it wasn't necessarily one. Like I got fired 10 if I had 10. But the point is give yourself the grace to not hang around people that make your life miserable. The way he summed it up later, subsequently, the next time I was always like, the quality of your life is directly related to the quality of the people that you let in your front door, which means who you hire and the clients you choose to accept.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just sort of earth shattering to me. And I don't know why, because it seems so freaking obvious.
No, but it's true. Like I was doing some consulting just last week, and we were talking about some employees that the firm owner keeps on that she doesn't want to. She knows she'd be better without them, but they've been there so long, and all the excuses and the conflict and avoidance. And I mean, sometimes I'm loving that advice too, because sometimes it strikes you and you're like, yes, that makes sense. But sometimes we know what we need to do, but we don't do it. So,
yeah, I mean, usually the best advice is very obvious, but somehow you have a blinder and you just can't see it.
Exactly.
Just can't see it. And, I think that was one of the, during the aughts, like I said, that's really when my practice started evolving and changing. And I think I got a lot smarter, is because I realized that the key to being successful was learning from people smarter than me, which means you have to upgrade who you hang out with. You've already heard this before. You are the average of the 5 people you hang around with most. Well, you need to upgrade who you hang around. Jim Purdue Sr., you may know him. He's a local lawyer, kind of legendary. He's mostly retired now. His son, Jim Purdue Jr., still practices and is a well-known attorney here in Houston. But Purdue Sr. was also It may still be a professor over at the University of Houston Law School. But he
Yeah.
told me about a concept, and he goes, "Look, Mark, I I have all of these lawyers that I know around the country, and what we do is once a quarter, we will all meet in somebody's law firm, and then we will all share best practices. So all these other lawyers fly into my office, and we'll share best practices, how we run things. And then the next quarter, I'll go to somebody else's office, and we'll all do that." And I'd never heard of something like that. Then I read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And Napoleon Hill, this book was written back in the 1930s, and he had interviewed a bunch of rich people and tried to come up with the central themes or tenets of how these people all got rich. And he came up with 17 ideas. Some of them are a little wacky if you read the book. But one that he came up with was the concept of a mastermind. And he was the one that coined the term mastermind. And that's the idea. You get people from different regions that are not competitive, that are willing to share, and you get together periodically and share best practices. Now, Jim Purdue Sr. didn't call it a mastermind, but that's what he was doing, is they had organized a mastermind. And I'm like, this is freaking brilliant. This is freaking brilliant. And I started exploring that concept. How can I get with other people who have similar businesses and let's share best practices? And I mean, everybody has figured something out that everybody has a solution to some problem. There's nothing there's nothing new under the sun. Somebody's addressed it at some point. You just haven't run across the person who's addressed it yet. Well, you need to expose yourself to these people. So I've been in multiple masterminds since then, various ones, organizations like PILMA, organizations like Atticus. I think there's Great Legal Marketing does one. You can do, you can put your own masterminds together, but basically what you're talking about is get together with like-minded people who have similar practices, and hopefully, you keep them geographically dispersed so you don't feel like they're competitors, so you can feel free to share, and learn from each other. It's amazing what that will do to just explode your practice.
I agree with that. I created a couple of those, and mostly for myself, but I'm planning to build those out in the future for Power Strategy Group. But once you really bond with the other members of the group, and you really feel like you can share, sort of like your defenses down, and just really. I mean, why not? Let's don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, that's the reason why we have podcasts. We want to share information. I mean, it's a really great vehicle, or even where I wrote my books as well. Those are great that you can pinpoint who told you that and how it had a big impact on your career.
And I am certain that there's probably dozens and dozens of other opportunities out there where I've run across people that have probably planted some seed in my head that I can't give proper attribution to. But the crux of it is exposing yourself to these people. Like I said, in the first half of my career, I pretty much just stuck to Harris County, Texas. I didn't go a lot of places. I didn't go to national conferences. I didn't do that kind of stuff. And, nowadays I'm on a plane, at least twice a month going somewhere. I mean, just in this past month, I've been to Orlando, to Atticus, I'm going to PILMA and Denver in a month. I went to Mass Torts Made Perfect in Vegas last week. And I'm exposing myself to other people. I'm exposing myself to other ideas and ways of doing things. And you get ideas, you get concepts down. One of the things I love to do when I go to conferences, I make sure that I look at every vendor in the hall deeply, like really see what they've got to sell. Because maybe you want to do business with these people, but maybe you just want to get an idea. Maybe they're selling something that I could look at and I could reverse engineer and I could do it myself cheaper. We've done that a lot. But, don't ignore the vendors at these vendor halls. They usually have at least concepts and ideas that can make your life a lot better, even if you may not want to invest with them specifically. and if nothing else, they usually buy you dinner at these conferences. I always tell
Yep.
my lawyers, anytime you go to a conference, if you buy dinner, you're doing something wrong.
Um, so I completely agree about the networking and the traveling. The last 2 weeks I was at ABA Tech Show, which is like part CLE, part networking, and thought leaders and idea sharing, and then part, actual trade show. And I completely agree. Like you have to build in time to go walk the exhibit hall. You don't just think about like people trying to sell you something. Like they're really, you're right. You can get ideas. And what I've noticed talking to a lot of the vendors is they're getting B2B type of ideas of how they can work together with each other or how to improve, especially when I talk to like some more of the younger startups. And there's a lot of those nowadays too. And then just like all the conversations you have, after hours, like at the dinners
Oh yeah.
or, the happy hours or what have you, or like I had the joy of going on the tequila train on Saturday in Guadalajara. It was so much fun. Anyway, I have to go back. But I hung out with other attorneys and other people I met anyway. But just like it was awesome. And I think that's important. Just make yourself available and go to these types of things to that's where I get a lot of my ideas. I'm always like coming back. I have to build in time to like share my ideas or either like record it asynchronistically to tell my team all my wonderful ideas when I come back.
Right. Yeah, and if you can, take your people with you. So
yeah, exactly.
I take
Yeah.
my COO Diana Berry with me, my co-host, my podcast. She goes to me to most things, not
Uh-huh.
everything, but to most things. And then, say, for example, when we're going to Pilma, which has a lot to do with marketing, a lot to do with intake processes and things like that, I'm taking my marketing manager and I'm taking my intake manager as well as Diana. So I'm taking my whole team up there. Now that's not cheap.
Yeah.
But that's a few hotel rooms and a few plane tickets, but it's worth it because it's not one of the hardest things is you go to all this stuff and you collect all these great ideas and then you come back and you try to then disseminate this information to your team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very hard thing to do because they weren't there. They don't see it.
Yeah.
It got lost. It starts to get lost in the translation. So if you can take your people, your key people to key things, it's worth it's not a cost, it's an investment. You are making an investment.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
you have to figure out how to implement it throughout the firm. That's one of the reasons we've gone to the EOS system, the entrepreneurial operating system, is I was having problems implementing all of these great ideas and make them spread down into a 75 person firm. So it got all the way down throughout the entire body of the firm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we started going to EOS, which EOS is a great implementation tool to use, in a law firm because there's, a cadence of accountability. There's your weekly level 10 meetings. You have your sub-level 10 meetings and so forth. And so ideas and concepts can get pushed down throughout the entire length and breadth of your firm. So we're fixing to do our 2-day offsite for our lawyers. We're going down to Galveston and using the EOS system with an EOS implementor, where we really are going to start hashing out what's the next 3 to 5 years look like for the firm.
That's awesome. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, traction's a favorite of mine as well. So we're getting to the close. I can't believe it already of this episode. But what would you say is your favorite board game?
Oh goodness, I would have to say chess, because I've just played that my whole life.
Okay.
And I got one of my daughters to play it. And she even started a little chess club at her elementary school back in the day.
Aww.
So that didn't last. She moved on to other things as teenagers tend to do. But I think it was one of my favorite. The reality is mostly what I do is I play a game called Shanghai Rummy, which is a card game with all of my friends. So that is our big game, actually.
There's like what you're supposed to say and what you really mean.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, what would you consider your superpower?
I think I am a good judge of people. I'm a good judge of character. And I'm not perfect, especially with an organization of my size, but I think my batting average is pretty damn good.
Well, that's important for staffing, hiring, and clients, and all of the above, and business people who you do business with.
Absolutely.
What habit would you say contributes to your success?
I would say reading and the continual search for knowledge. I read constantly, and I am always looking for new ideas. So I would say that's just that kind of insatiable search for the next idea, the next golden, idea. That would be what I would say.
And like when you read, like other like multiple genres, because like I felt like I read all the business books that existed, and then they all said the same thing after a while.
Yeah.
So.
I think I'm at that point. I've insatiably read all the business books that come out. And I am a little searching for something that sounds different. I have sort of lately switched over to more mindfulness type and philosophy. I've been reading a lot of Stoics. Don't read a lot of fiction, although I probably will pick one up here pretty soon because like I said, I've run out of things. I love historical biographies. I like to read about people.
See, that's good though, because it's like it brings some business or life or like what people. It's like a podcast and a book in a way about their life, depending on just what did they do wrong, and where they pivot, or what led to their success, type of thing.
Yeah.
I think I've gotten into that mostly on Audible though, because like some of them are really, really long.
Right. Well, I do a lot of Audible with books and podcasts. I have an hour and a half commute in the morning because I have a kid drop off run to make.
Oh, okay.
So my kid, she'll talk to me for 5 minutes, but then she puts the headphones in.
Yeah. My husband has this rule where the kids are not allowed to be on their phones in the car for his car. And I don't have the same rule, but I like that rule because then they have to talk to him. And like in my car, I like, okay, at least talk to me for a few minutes and then you can go back to your phone.
I get 5 minutes. That's about it. I get 5 minutes and then the headphone.
Okay. Well, so what's a favorite book or podcast that you would say, oh my gosh, you definitely need to check this one out?
Well, I feel that everybody in the world has read Traction, but I am probably wrong. There's probably plenty of people out there who haven't. So I like Gino Wickman's Traction. Also because we've implemented the EOS system, which is based off of Traction. So to me, it so fits in with what we do as our firm culture. We basically adopted Traction as our firm culture. And what Traction really means is it means about being effective. That's it. A lot of people have great ideas. I've had plenty of people that can come up with a million brilliant ideas and can't execute on a single one of them, which means it's basically worthless. You're wasting your time. So Traction is all about coming up with great ideas and then executing on those great ideas. And that would be what I think would be my favorite book. My favorite podcast, other than my own, The Successful Barrister, cheap plug. I listen to Peter Attia, which is not a business podcast. It is a health podcast.
Oh, did he write Outlive?
He wrote Outlive. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
That was my Christmas gift last year. I gave away 400 copies of Outlive.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a big Peter Attia fan, and I find it different from the daily grind of business.
Yeah.
And it's all about being healthy and living a good life from a physical and mental health perspective. So that's my drive home podcast.
Awesome. I'm actually still trying to listen to the rest of the book. I think I started about a year ago. It's really long.
It is. Yes,
see how
it
far
is.
I've gotten through it.
I will give you a hint.
What?
Last week, Peter Attia's teenage daughter interviewed him.
Okay.
For a high school project. So his teenage daughter is interviewing him in front of a group of senior citizens at a nursing home.
Okay.
And in about 45 minutes, he totally summarized the book.
Oh my gosh. I still have 9 hours left and I'm not even halfway done. And I don't even know what speed I'm.
If you get stuck, go find that episode. And it's just a few weeks old. And it's his daughter interviewing him. I think she's 14 or something, but it's really sweet, really cute. And she's basically interviewing her dad. But it was just perfect summary of the book.
Okay, well, thanks for that life hack. Otherwise, you have to listen to that like 5-point speed.
Yes, I get it. I feel you.
Well, Mark, is there any other like closing wisdom or thoughts or you'd like to share, and then also how people can find you if they want to connect?
Well, I just think, like I said, my closing wisdom is look for help. Whether it's through a group or through a mastermind or a coaching organization, or hiring a coach. I'm a member of, I do all of it. I mean, I spend a tremendous amount of money on coaches and masterminds, but I still think it's worth it. But find somebody. There's people out there who've been through this before, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And sometimes you just need somebody to talk to. So,
yeah.
Great. But other than that, just, in addition to your great podcast, come check out the Successful Barrister podcast. If you want to get on my mailing list, email me at marc@marcwhitehead.com. The trick is my mother couldn't spell, so she spelled Mark with a C. I've later come to find out that was actually the French spelling. My mom couldn't spell, but it's actually the Mark with a C is French. But anyway, marc@marcwhitehead.com, and I'll put you on my mailing list.
Yes, I've been on your mailing list, and I do enjoy the comics and the content. So I think that's how I saw your advertisement for the podcast and was like, hey, let's have you on, because I've known you for a long time and I've liked your content. So I'm glad we could make this work out. Well, thanks so much, Mark. It was great to have this time to sit one-on-one and learn more about you and your practice. And thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Power Up Your Practice Law Practice Management podcast. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, tell someone else about us, and we'd love to get this podcast shared with others to reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive content, tips, and updates straight to your inbox. And exciting news, our book, The Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with strategies, 25 chapters, to help you elevate your practice and achieve your goals. So join us next week as we dive into more advice and insight on law practice management. We'll see you next time.